I feel like I should just stop saying things like, oh, I'm gonna be good this month when it comes to book buying. Because whenever I say that, the opposite always happens. So maybe for April, I should just say that I'll buy everything. Because maybe that's the trick, and maybe it'll actually work this time. As you have probably guessed, I bought more books than I planned to in March, and I'm going to try to do this as fast as I can because I don't want to put you to sleep, so let's get to it. The first book I picked up in March was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and most of you have probably read this classic, but if you haven't, it's basically about this committed science student, Victor Frankenstein, who ends up assembling a human being from stolen body parts, and the story, I believe, is pretty much about the repercussions of that act and other things that end up happening to this creature that Victor created. I've heard many good things about Frankenstein. I've heard it's a bit more heartwarming than expected, so I'm really excited to read it, and I am so happy that I got this Rhodes Classics edition because it's just beautiful. The next book I got is Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I believe this one is about a man who chooses to live underground, and he basically writes this obsessive narrative about people and society. It's known as the first existentialist novel out there, so I'm pretty intrigued on how I'm gonna like this book. Next up is The Hound of Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. As much as I loved watching the BBC Sherlock shows, I actually have not read the books, so this will be my first one, and I believe this is a detective story about a beast or hound that is suspected to have killed Sir Charles Baskerville, so it's up to Sherlock and Watson to figure out what's going on. The next book I got is The Snow Child by Ewan Ivey. This is set in Alaska in the 1920s and focuses on the life of an older couple who have always longed to have a child, and one day they basically build this snow child. And basically they started seeing this little girl that kind of hangs around their home, but nobody has ever reported a missing child or nobody has ever seen this missing child. So the question is whether or not she's actually real or she's magical. Next book I got is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and this book focuses on 4 college classmates who move to New York in search of fame and fortune. So I've heard a lot of good things about this book. I've heard a lot of tears have been shed because of this book, so I'm a little intimidated to read it because I don't know if I can emotionally handle that yet, but I'm planning to read it this month with a few good friends, and at least we'll have each other, right? Because you need support groups. Next up is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Now, I confess, I actually don't remember what this book is about, but I do have trusted friends and book reviewers that have recommended this book. They have given it such high ratings. It's supposed to be a powerful story, so I'm really curious to see what it's about. There's a small blurb at the back of the book that basically says that it's about this girl named Lauren who ends up fleeing into the unprotected American landscape after a night of fire and death. And it sounds like what started as a flight for survival turns into something more. So I'm looking forward to reading this. I think I'm supposed to be buddy reading this with somebody. I can't remember who. Anyway, if somebody wants to buddy read this with me, let me know. The next book I got is Slim by Design by Brian Wansink. This is a nonfiction book, and for those of you who don't know, I majored in nutrition back in university, so this is more of a work-ish related pick because I've been reading his book called Mindless Eating, and I really like it. I find it very interesting. So when he released this book, a couple of colleagues commented on how interesting it was because the premise is that people can eat healthier by just rearranging, their environment, like their home, kitchen, restaurants, groceries, workplaces, etc. So I'm really curious to see how this one is. The next book I got is The Broken Eye by Brent Weeks. This is book number 3 in the Lightbringer series, which has a total of 5 books. Now, obviously, I won't talk to you about what book 3 is about because I haven't read book 2, and that would just be spoiling both of us. But book 1 is basically about the Prism, Gavin Gyle, who is pretty much the most powerful man in the world who is trying to fight an uprising by a self-proclaimed king. So this is a fantasy series with a magic system that uses color in the way it works. And I have read the first book. I don't really remember a lot of details because it's been a while, so I'm probably going to reread that at some point, but I do remember enjoying it. Next book on my stack is The Flight of the Silvers by Daniel Price, and this is about two sisters, Hannah and Amanda, who survive a destructive event, and they find themselves as the only two survivors. They also find themselves in a strange new Earth, and from there they find other survivors who they basically team up with to find this one person who can save them before time runs out. A few of my friends have read this book and have highly recommended it, so I'm excited to read it. I actually already had a copy of this a few months ago, but my copy was scratched and dented and it was torn at the back. So my good friend Jess from Instagram gave me her good paperback copy because she ended up getting a hardcover. So this was free and it was a gift. And see, not all my books are, from shopping. Jess also gave me one of her extra copies of Tigana by Guy Gavriel Kay, and I believe this is about a group of rebels who try to overthrow a cruel king in order to get back their homeland. The next book I got is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon, and I believe this is historical fiction set in 1939, focusing on Joe Cavalier, who is a young artist at that time, and he ends up escaping Prague to go to New York, and from there he meets his cousin, Sammy Clay, and they form this partnership of, I guess, creating a comic book focusing on superheroes, and we just follow their story from there. The next book I got is The White Dragon by Anne McCaffrey. This is the third book in the Dragon Riders of Pern series, and I still haven't read the first book, and I pretty much can't remember what it's about, but here's what I do know. It's a science fiction series, and it has dragons. I first heard about this series when I was reading The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini, and I just adored dragons at that time, so I pretty much looked up a lot of books related to dragons. So this was definitely one of the ones that came up. It seems like a classic, as it is quite an old series, but I'm looking forward to reading that because I actually haven't read a science fiction book with dragons, so that should be interesting in itself. Now, March was the month when I read Juliette Marier's Daughter of the Forest. I absolutely loved this book, and after this first book by her, I can't wait to read more of her work. So the next books that I got in March was because of how much I fell in love with her work. So the first book that I got is Dreamer's Pool, which is book one of her Blackthorn and Grimm series. This book follows the story of Blackthorn, who is a woman set on vengeance, and she's basically imprisoned in this cell waiting for an execution. And she has a cellmate named Grimm. So what happens next is somebody offers her freedom in exchange of her using her powers for good for, I believe, about 7 years. So that means she can't avenge herself like she originally wanted. And then these two characters end up working with a prince who was pretty much on his way to meet his bride, but apparently the bride is not who he expected it would be. So yeah, I guess things go from there. I also got Tower of Thorns, which is the second book, and Den of Wolves, which is the third book in the series. The next book I got is The Dark Mirror, again by Juliette Marier. And I was going to tell you guys what this book is about, but I was reading the synopsis and I cannot pronounce the names of the characters, so I'm just not going to try because you're probably not going to get anything out of it. I'm just going to talk about it once I read it and know what's going on. I also got the second book, which is Blade of Fortune. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. And I also got the third book, which is called The Well of Shades. So pretty much I've worked my way through most of her works because that's just how much I loved her. The last book I got by Juliette Marier is Heart's Blood, and I really wanted this book mainly because of my friend Jess. So as I mentioned, she's the one who gave me a couple of her books. And when we went to this bookstore in Toronto, she found this book. She freaked out because she just had to have it. And I asked her why, and she said that this book is not really in print anymore, so it's been really hard to find. And then she said it's loosely based on Beauty and the Beast. So that's pretty much all I had to hear. If it's by Juliette and if it's based on Beauty and the Beast, which is pretty much my favorite fairy tale of all time, I just had to have it. So I went home that night and I looked up a copy of this book, and once I found one I was just like, that's it, you're gonna be mine. I also went through a short phase where I looked up other authors who are sort of similar to Juliette. So the next book I got is The Wild Girl. This, I believe, is about a girl who falls in love with one of the Grimm brothers. That's correct, the brothers Grimm. So just by that alone, I'm already intrigued. And also one of my friends, Ray, actually gave this book quite a high rating, and I know she's like one of the pickiest readers that I've met. So if she gives a book a 5-star, I'm like, give it to me, it must be amazing. So I'm pretty excited about this one. The other book I got was Bitter Greens by Kate Forsyth. So this one, I believe, is based on a loose retelling of Rapunzel. And because I've been enjoying retellings so much lately, I just couldn't resist looking for more. So when I found out about this book and I saw it for sale, I just had to have it. The next book I got is The Bars of Bone Plain by Patricia McKillip. And to tell you the truth, I can't really remember what this book is about, but this is mainly a cover buy, and it was like for $3. So, I mean, it's pretty much brand new condition. I've also seen it on a few of my friends' Goodreads accounts, and I've been intrigued, so yeah. The next book I got is The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. I feel like this is one of the classic books that I should read because it's a classic and I just haven't had a chance to. So when I saw this on sale, I just had to get it. I also have one friend on Instagram, Abby, who absolutely adores the characters in this book. So I feel like that alone is an incentive for me to read it because of how much she loves it. The next book I got is Hello Universe by Erin Entrada Kelly. This came in my March Al Crate Jr. rep box, and this is a story about 4 middle grade students who probably wouldn't have really interacted with each other until one pranked the other kid's pet guinea pig. So I guess we have Gulliver, the pet guinea pig, to thank for this story. So I think this is going to be quite an adorable read, and I can't wait to get to it. The next book I got is Say Goodbye for Now by Catherine Ryan Hyde. This was the March pick for Once Upon a Book Club box, and this is the story focusing on 2 boys who become best friends, but because one of them is white and one of them is black, they pretty much get ridiculed and they face a lot of problems with the fact that, you know, they're seen together. But I actually already finished this book and it is definitely one that I recommend. It's a heartwarming story. It's painful in parts, of course, but it definitely makes you think and in some ways believe in the good in humanity. The next book is The Hidden Memory of Objects by Daniel Mages Amato. I got this book from the March The Bookish box. And this story focuses on a girl called Megan who investigates the truth behind her brother's death, and she has this ability to see memories attached to her brother's belongings. The next book I got is Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. This book focuses on Alosa, who is a 17-year-old pirate captain who pretty much has one mission, and that is to find a map to a legendary treasure trove. She actually purposely lets herself be captured by her enemy so that she can search their ship. And I'm looking forward to reading this. I do love sea adventures and pirates, but I'm a little nervous about the fact that it's YA because my experience with YA lately has been hit or miss, so hopefully this is a lot better than I actually expect. Finally, the last book I got in March was The Curse of Chalian, which is by Lois McMaster Berjol. And I pretty much found out about this book because my friend Jess mentioned this to me because she found it on Robin Hobb's list of books that she loved, and that's pretty much all I needed to know. If Robin Hobb loved it, I want to read it. This book focuses on the story of Kazaril, who is a 35-year-old man who has been assigned to tutor a young girl who is the sister of a boy that is next in line to rule. Now, Kazaril apparently dreads this assignment because it involves going back to court where he has actually been betrayed by people in the past. Another thing that is concerning is that there is apparently a curse hanging over the house of Chalian, and Kazaril will have to use dark forbidden magic in order to protect his charge. I'm really looking forward to this one, not only because Robin Hobb loved it, but because I do enjoy adult fiction quite a bit, and just the fact that we're starting with the story with our character as a 35-year-old kind of makes it different for me already. And I also like that this is sort of underrated, or at least I haven't heard many people talk about it. So it almost feels like if this is a hit, there's going to be another author that I'm going to love, and it's going to be exciting, and it's an adventure. So I'm looking forward to this one. I know Kitty G loved this book already. She recently posted a review of this. If people I trust love it, give it to me. That is it for all the books that I got in March. I'm terrified to actually count them, so I won't. What is the book that you're most looking forward to in your March book haul? Let me know, and maybe I'll want to read it too. Not that I need more books on my TBR, but you know what I mean. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Other than that, that's it for me. Read books, be kind, and don't let the muggles get you down. Bye!